Good Good evening and welcome to Explorers, Seekers of the Truth, Episode 10, The Fouke Monster. You know, this is kind of funny because this is completely unplanned, but it was 3 years ago today that I made my first journey to Fouke, Arkansas, to see the area that spawned the legend of the Boggy Creek. And I literally wanted to sing that like the beginning of Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. But Les asked me never to sing on the show again, fearing that we'd get kicked off of Facebook for listener cruelty.
That's
so
true.
I am joined by my best friend and co-host tonight, Les Cavich, as always. How are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Thank you very much, Chad. How are you?
Good.
That's good. Well, we want to, like Chad has said, we want to welcome everybody to our 10th episode of Explorers, Seekers of the Truth, that now that we've been doing the live videos. And before we begin, I want to remind everyone that you could reach us live tonight in the comments section on Facebook underneath the video broadcast. Anything that you post will be seen on Be Live. As you can see, the little graphic we had posted up there. Any comments that you make, we'll be able to see and we'll be able to reply. So if you have anything you want to say, anything you want to add throughout the show, you could do that, and hopefully we'll see it as providing everything works. You could also find us at our website, www.explorersgroup.com. You can find us on Twitter at Explorers Group. And, of course, as you will be viewing tonight, on Facebook, /Explorers. So let me get that off the screen really quick. Yeah. So, as always, those are places you could find us at. Chad?
Yeah. Especially tonight, please feel free to submit questions. You know, we do have a very special guest on. And if it's something that, maybe that Les and I, don't bring up that you're interested in hearing, please, bring it up, throw it up there. We'll try to work it in on the Q&A session.
That's right. So tonight we're going to be talking about the Fouke monster, which is the legend that spawned the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek. We'll travel down to Miller County, Arkansas, and discuss their Bigfoot-like cryptid. And to better give you the tale, we have with us tonight a very special guest. He's an author, cryptozoologist, musician, as well as a TV and radio personality. Tonight we have the honor of talking with Lyle Blackburn. Lyle, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Oh, thanks for coming on, man. We greatly appreciate it. So, for anyone who doesn't know you, can you give the listeners a little bit about yourself and what got you into cryptozoology, and how did you get to where you are today?
Well, to keep it a succinct story, basically, I've always loved the concept of cryptids. Even when I was a kid, started out, I loved horror movies and things like that, and then I saw some things like the Patterson-Gimlin film. I saw the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek, and that really captured my imagination because, in those cases, the monster, so to speak, was allegedly real. Right. So, throughout my life, I just always kind of followed those kind of TV shows and read books about it. And after some time, I became a musician and also a writer. And at some point, I started writing for the horror magazine Rue Morgue, and that kind of gave me the idea that I wanted to write a book. And I thought, what is my favorite subject? And that happens to be The Legend of Boggy Creek. And nobody had ever written a book about the history of the sightings and the making of the movie or anything, which I was surprised. So that's what started me. I wrote a book called The Beast of Boggy Creek. And from there, I was, TV shows called, and that kind of launched me into more of a full-time pursuit of, cryptid research and writing books of this nature. So, and that's been going on for a while. So, it's just, I could have never imagined that this would even be anything remotely related to a vocation later in life to study monsters, but that's basically what I do.
That's awesome.
So Lyle, let's talk a little bit about the history of the Fouke monster. Can you tell us some of the earlier reports? Kind of give us an idea, because you think about, not just the stuff that was covered in the movie, but stuff that happened, years prior. Can you fill us in on that?
Yeah, definitely. The movie roughly spans the decades of maybe the late 50s to through the 60s and early 70s. And the movie was made shortly after, in the early 70s, shortly after there was some press coverage of Fouke monster reports, but the reports went back a lot further than that. It's just that nobody outside of the locals knew about it. It wasn't something they reported to the newspaper, and it wasn't until the movie came out in '72 that it was, world famous. And especially in doing my research, by going up there, getting to know the locals and visiting with a lot of people who were, had sightings or their relatives had sightings, I discovered that, they went back far. The earliest sighting I can date would be around 1908. And that was a girl who saw a upright hair-covered creature in an area called Mercer Bayou, which is south of Fouke, Arkansas, which, for those that don't know, it's very near the Texas border in the southwest corner of Arkansas, near Louisiana and Texas. Then there was some pretty good sightings throughout like the 30s and 40s, in which people started to realize that there was some sort of a strange creature or creatures living in the Sulphur River bottoms there near Mercer Bayou and around Fouke. And some of those sightings were, quite startling. People would be on their homes out there in this rural area, and they would see, a upright, tall, hair-covered creature walking on two legs. Often the sightings were brief and quick, and some of them were more alarming, in which the creature, was lurking outside the homes at night and frightening people. So these things started kind of to build, and then in the 60s there was a rash of sightings, and that's where it really got dramatic. And I've interviewed quite a few people, or come up, found the stories about the sightings in the 60s, and those were corroborated by not just the locals, but people even passing through the area had reported seeing something like running down the side of the road or crossing the road or in and around Boggy Creek and places like that, where they would see this primate-like creature. And, at the time, Bigfoot was not even a term that they knew of. And hence, it was basically called a monster, for lack of a better term, and it was described more as an ape or a monkey-like creature, because that was the terminology that they knew. They didn't know to compare it to Bigfoot. So those were kind of the earliest sightings before, the movie.
Mm-hmm. So one of the ones that always kind of interests me is, the three-toed print. Do you have any theories on it? Was this some kind of disformity? Was it, something that maybe had broken a foot along the way? Or, are we looking at something different from a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch?
Well, yeah, there was the most famous, I guess, footprint find, or it was actually a trackway found on June 13th, 1971 in a bean field, a freshly plowed bean field. So these particular tracks were, long, like large human-sized tracks on the large end, but they were strange because they had three toes, and you could kind of see where it possibly had a fourth digit that wasn't quite registering. But all in all, it was a three-toed track, which kind of established that southern Bigfoots have three toes, which is not, that's too generalized, because there's lots of southern Bigfoot incidents and footprint finds where they have five toes, even four toes. And even in the Fouke area, there's been, tracks found that are four-toed and five-toed. They're not just strictly three-toed. But I guess my theory about that, if these tracks are indeed authentic, then, you have the possibility of deformity due to inbreeding and things like that. I mean, you're obviously going to be dealing with a very small population of creatures in this case. And, the fact is that, due to inbreeding and things like that, the first things that come out of that, usually, in terms of inbreeding would be deformities in the hands and feet. So that might explain three toes. You know, it could be a genetic thing. My problem with it is the height and weight of the creature. It would be very hard to balance on three toes, and certainly no primates or primate, related animals have anything less than 5 digits. So it's kind of very out of the ordinary, and I'm not completely positive that that part of the case is authentic. I don't know. So it's hard to say.
That's kind of interesting too, because I mean, I agree with you with the possible deformities and stuff like that, because like you had said, it's a smaller group and it could be a result of interbreeding amongst that little colony. However, is there any, I'm not very familiar with the terrain around there and the wildlife. Like, I would assume there's like alligators in the bog and the creeks and stuff like that. Is that are they in that area? Because maybe this thing had a tussle with an alligator or something like that and lost a couple of toes, and as a result of that, maybe it couldn't feed like it normally would or get around as easily, and it found it easy to kind of venture more in towards the human or the civilized or the habited areas that humans live, and maybe it found it easier to pick from corn cribs and basically raid a lot of the rural farms and feed itself that way due to some kind of a injury to the feet.
I mean, that's certainly plausible and makes sense. The problem with this is that the photo and the track castings, especially the photo, was taken by game wardens and stuff, that it just doesn't look like something that's been compromised by an alligator bite. And back in those days, there's a lot of gators down there now. Back in those days, there wasn't a lot. I mean, the possibility would certainly be there to have a tangle with an alligator, but for an alligator to bite off part of a foot or something, I think the foot would just look even more mangled. Sure. in a way. So this almost seemed like it was that way from birth, I guess, would be the best way to put it.
Now, I had seen a photo of the ThreeToed Tracks online, and it almost looked oddly reptilian. Unless that photo was just a poor replication to just, to show that, hey, this is a three-toed track, and I don't know if it was the actual track or not, but what I saw almost looked bird-like or reptilian. It had that long extension to the back and the three toes kind of splaying out forward. I don't know, unless I was looking at the wrong one.
Yeah, I'm not sure. There is one of the tracks that was taken that was published in the Texarkana Gazette, and even that one, it definitely looks in a way strange, not so much ape-like as it is, and you see this in a lot of these cases of what I would call swamp monsters, the lizard man from Bishopville and other places, that there's always a three-toed track associated with it. So in that respect, it is kind of consistent with these other swamp monsters, of which some of them are reptilian, but hard to say. I mean, it's just such an anomaly in, not ape-like and not even human-like, that it's just so hard to say. And that's why, in my book, I kind of talk about that whole issue and even the circumstances revolving around that particular track find. I found that a lot of the other tracks were far more credible, and those had 4 toes and 5 toes. And to me, those had a better credibility than the 3-toe version. So I'm never sure that that's, it just complicates the problem here, because it's hard enough to think that there's an ape-like creature eluding things, and then to say it's walking on 3 toes is even tougher. It's just so bizarre. It's just such a strange case.
Right. That's why one of the questions I had is this really like a relative to the Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, or was it something all its own entirely because of that odd track, that three-toed track? But you know, I guess like you said, with a small population, there's a good chance that it could have just been natural deformities because of the small interbreeding circle, I guess.
Yeah, I would go with that over anything. And then, I mean, as far as the relation to Sasquatch, I mean, if you just look at the descriptions, of which many are coming from very credible people and people that I have gotten to know, and their description is definitely Bigfoot-like. I mean, it's 7 foot, 6, 7 foot tall, walking upright, covered in kind of shaggy hair of dark brown, reddish brown kind of colors. All the description basically fits with Bigfoot, or
right.
More specifically a southern type Bigfoot. I mean, there's some differences between what the descriptions you're getting in the Pacific Northwest and Ohio.
The northern ones seem to be a little more stocky and robust, where the southern ones are taller, lankier, a little thinner from my research anyway. So
yeah, exactly, which almost makes sense. I mean, it's a completely different environment because it's hot and humid. There's not a lot of cold weather. So you find the same thing in bears. It's called Bergman's law. The bears up in the north are bigger, bulkier. The bears down here are much smaller. I mean, there is you could even find a black bear in East Texas or Arkansas, but it's going to be very small compared to what you're going to find in Yellowstone or something.
Right. Well, all good points. But so let's talk about the Fouke and Miller County kind of geography, and it's part of the Texarkana Metropolitan Statistical Area, like you had mentioned, and is located at the intersection of U.S. Highway 71 and Interstate 49 in Miller County, Arkansas, I believe. I've never been there personally. Now, Chad has actually been down there himself, but I've never been in the area personally. But can you give the listeners an idea of what the area is like in terms of hiding and possibly supporting a creature like that of that size?
Yeah, I mean, it's as I mentioned, it's in southwest Arkansas, and the area there. Arkansas itself is, it's called the natural state, and it's very wooded, a lot of lakes, a lot of swampy bottom areas. There's even mountainous areas, and down there in the southern parts there, there's a lot of swampy areas. So while Texarkana is a pretty big city, and Fouke is only about 20 minutes from that, it's a completely different world, because when you start heading out towards Fouke, I mean, it quickly becomes more heavily wooded, and starts heading down into those bottomlands. And that 49 highway was built in 2005, so only in the last decade or so was that even there. Before that, the only way to get there was this little Highway 71, which you could pass right by Fouke and would never know it. It's just a few buildings there, and then right south of Fouke, it opens up into the Sulphur River wildlife area along the Sulphur River, which overflows into the Mercer Bayou, and all that kind of flows down to the Red River. And all of that area is still a lot of it undeveloped. There's a large tracts of wooded areas, where some of the homes sort of, or dot the countryside in and out through there. Plenty of areas, in my opinion, for animals to stay hidden. We take canoes back in there to those parts of the bayou, and there's nobody back there. I mean, go back there and never see anybody. Right. And there's places where it's very hard to get to. It's tangles of vines. It's like I said, wooded and muddy and murky, and I mean, it's almost a place where you would expect to see a monster, really, and that's one of the cool parts about it. It just has that vibe, you know, of kind of a creepy vibe. It's beautiful countryside, but when the sun goes down and you're out there on the bayou, you're looking out because you can feel it. Something strange is lurking down there, and it's just even though, of course, you know, some of that is starting to get developed, and slowly but surely they put in a highway or this or that. Mm-hmm. But it's still fairly remote in Miller County there.
Yeah, I was going to ask, is that you said it was like a wildlife sanctuary? Is that private? Is it like, I would assume not overly populated? Like you said, it's only now starting to get developed. So how many acres would you say that is?
It's like 20,000 or so.
Pretty spacious.
Yeah, it's big, and it's a state-run wildlife management area. So the Sulphur Wildlife Management Area also includes there's a lot of ducks down there, so there's a lot of duck sanctuary that's in there. There are no state-run camping grounds. There's no campgrounds. There's no RV parks. There's literally one little place to camp, aside from just knowing where to go and camp in the bottoms. But, you know, it's not like a lot of these places where, you know, there's a lake and then there's upstate campgrounds and all this nonsense. There's none of that going on.
So it's perfect, in other words.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, you can see alligators back there. There's cougars and wild hogs and deer and every sort of snake you don't want to find, and all that stuff. It's there. It's primitive area.
Yeah, I was going to say, one of the things when I went to Fouke was the fact that the only reason I knew I was in Fouke was because I saw the Monster Mart, and that's the only reason I knew I was in town.
What year did you go there?
It was 3 years ago. It was
3 years ago today, right?
Yeah. So it was 2014.
Right. So did they have the big Bigfoot head on top of the Monster Mart yet?
Yeah, they had the big head with it's like I guess it was like a reddish backed sign that said Monster Mart. I believe it was red and yellow.
Right. Because they didn't, like, before my book came out, when I went there originally, none of that was there. There was the mural on the wall, the Monster Mart, but when you went inside, there was no, wasn't a bunch of T-shirts you could buy or anything. It was just so, looked like nobody even, you'd question whether you're in the right town. It was crazy, but ever since the book came out, it kind of resurged, kind of gave them a resurgence. And then, we did the Animal Planet Finding Bigfoot show and a couple others. And luckily one of the guys there bought the Monster Mart and has transformed it. Now it's like the coolest convenience store on the planet. He's got the giant Bigfoot, and he's added more since 2014. There's a lot more to that facade on that building. Yeah. So it's a whole different change.
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's convenience store / museum / a good place to ask about recent sightings and stuff like that. When I was there, at least, that's one of the areas, like, going down that way. I think one of the things that's actually attracted me to the Legend of Boggy Creek and the Fouke Monster is seeing the area. And that is definitely the area you would expect a Bigfoot monster type creature to live in. It is vast expanses. It goes all the way over into Texas. And it is just some of the most beautiful country, especially in that area, some of the most beautiful country I've ever been in.
Yeah, no doubt. And you're right. It does. All that just kind of goes down into East Texas, which is heavily forested, which most people don't really realize. They think of Texas, but there's just sightings all up and down there. It's the Fouke Monster is the most famous, but if you expand out, there's just a lot of areas where there's sightings over the years. So, yeah, certainly a prime spot of southern Bigfoot.
Now, how does the film version of the creature, is the film's version historically accurate based on like the information that you've collected over the years, or is it kind of the Hollywood, let's make it bigger, faster, stronger, scarier?
Well, I mean, in a sense, if you look at the encounters that are dramatized in the film, reenacted basically, because they are pretty much what people reported. And in some cases, the people who reported them are actually reenacting them in the movie. So, but of course, now it's definitely not a Hollywood movie because it was made by Charles Pierce, who lived in Texarkana. He never made a movie. It's literally a do-it-yourself, independent made film, which it was extremely hard for doing it in 1971. Yeah. Now it's no problem. You can edit on your desktop, but it is it's a film. So you had to kind of truncate and the span that it took and the sightings, to make it into a cohesive story about the creature, basically. So, in terms of storytelling, he had to kind of connect them together in a contiguous way. But if the sightings themselves and the information, he just literally saw the stuff that was being printed in the Texarkana Gazette and thought, man, this is amazing. He started out to make a documentary and then just sort of morphed into a sort of a documentary / horror movie. But yeah, the things in there are accurate, and they're based on real reports by real people, and that's what synced up with my research into those sightings as well.
Okay, yeah, because the one report is, I guess, Bob and Elizabeth Ford from like May of '71. It's the one with the Bigfoot, the creature actually attacking their home and them chasing it off. And did you ever have a chance to meet them or speak with them in person?
No, Bobby Ford was the one that tangled with the creature in that incident. That's really, the Ford incident is kind of what kicked it off into the public domain, so to speak, because that incident occurred in May of '71, and that's what got in the newspaper, and that's when all of it started coming out that there's a creature down here. But Bobby's passed on, and I never could locate Don or Elizabeth Ford. But the good thing is there was quite a few newspaper articles about the incidents that happened to them, and also Elizabeth wrote a letter to the Texarkana Gazette after the movie had come out and kind of corrected the facts, so to speak. Which really, again, Charles Pierce had to make that, and that's the final scene in the movie. That's the climax, because there's so much more to that, because the creature, was up around the house night after night and it attacked Bobby, and he went to the hospital. So of course that's like the climax of it. But she basically corrected the sequence of the movie, but essentially, again, it's like what you see is that's what happened. The thing was creeping around, and they ended up confronting it, shooting at it. It attacked Bobby, and he went to the hospital. And so, yeah, since our documentary Boggy Creek Monster has come out, we did get contacted by the Ford family. So I have located them since, but at the time, I could never track them down, because Ford is a pretty common name. They don't live in the Fouke. They were outsiders, and nobody knew who they were or where they went. So it was impossible.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, they only lived in the house, was it like for a week prior to this happening to them and stuff like that? It was a relatively short time from what I remember reading.
Yeah, it was like a week or two. So they were barely there, and they're like, what kind of place did we move to? This is ridiculous. And they were out of there. So yeah.
What a housewarming gift.
Yeah.
Welcome. Now here's a monster.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts. I mean, it's that, and too bad that that house is no longer there. It was torn down some years ago, but I've been to the property, and for a kid who loved the movie, I'm just like, oh wow, this is cool. I'm even standing on the property where all that happened, but um, that's just the Boggy Creek geek in me that I want to see the places. But yeah, I mean, it's a real thing there. I know where the property was, and the whole deal.
Yeah,
Well, following the movie hype around 1974, reporting of the creature seems to have taken a downturn. I guess that's until those two brothers found a trackway near Russellville, Arkansas, and this is followed by a few more sightings. Can you share your thoughts on this downturn and these tracks, and are the sightings and the witnesses credible?
Well, there was a lot of sightings. The Ford incident happened in '71, and once that got in the paper, and then the old timers said, wait, there's been tons of other sightings that were never reported. So the newspaper started reporting the old ones, and then there was quite a few sightings from in '71, '72, up through '74. But once the movie came out and the newspapers they just run so many stories, and the movie had already played out. At that point, if you had a sighting, there was no one putting it on the record.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the Miller County Sheriff's Office was still getting stuff, but they even downplayed it because it was causing such a ruckus in the town that they quickly figured out that we got to downplay this because it's just bringing monster hunters and people in here. And the movies, the whole thing was a problem. But so you just don't have a lot of the newspaper coverage, and that's where you would have been reported. But in my research, I pick up where all that left off, because then I started getting reports from people who saw it, say in the early '80s, and all these reports that just were never published. They were never on the internet even. So the drop in sightings, I think, was one, there was just tons of people running rampant through the woods down there. And I think like any animal, they're going to lay low, not be adventurous. And the sightings that were happening, the newspapers just didn't care anymore. They weren't going to run that. So you just kind of have a gap there until some of the Bigfoot groups years later were starting to pick up some of the old sightings. And then, of course, my book, I flushed out all that stuff. So, I, in my opinion, sightings have been happening all along. It just depends on who was interested and where they were recorded. So,
right. Well, I guess you have, like, Fouke, I would assume, is probably like a sleepy small town, and they don't want to create any kind of mass hysteria. So they would probably try to snuff out any new claim or anything as quickly as they can, like you said, to avoid droves of people, especially now with everywhere you turn there's a new group popping up and whatnot. And I would assume they don't want all these people in there, because sometimes people may carry weapons and are going into the woods armed. And yeah, I guess they just don't want anything to happen to them or to the people from town.
Yeah, it just depends. Some of the folks embrace it and think it's okay, but a lot of people, it's just where they live, and they don't want yahoos running around down there who don't know where they're going. They're oftentimes on private land, and I go there quite a bit, but I've gotten to know the people, and I know where to go, and they I guess they tolerate me or like me. But if you're just a bunch of outsiders coming in there, oftentimes these people are roaming around on people's private property. And of course, that no one wants to claim that they had a monster sighting, because all of a sudden you got a bunch of people running around. So on the whole, while they embrace it, they're not going to tell you very many specifics about where it was seen or who saw it.
Right.
That stuff I've gotten that stuff over the years because they've come to trust me, so It's not something they just started gushing out, the first time I went there.
Right. Well, I guess, you've built yourself to a point where you're a recognized kind of local, expert of the local lore and legends. So, you got the stronghold on that. So I would imagine that's why they would be more receptive to you than, say, if Chad and I went down there and started snooping around. You know what I mean? So.
Right, you would have to tell them you're a friend of mine, and then you'd probably be okay. Just
as long as you're all right with that, that'll be our new line.
Right. But I mean, they've had a Boggy Creek festival several times and things. So a lot of them they see the benefit of it. They know that it brings people to town, and it's kind of a love-hate thing. I mean, No, I don't think any town aspires to be connected to a monster, but at this point, they're just like, hey, it is what it is. Whether it's even real or not, it's a part of the local culture, and therefore we should embrace it and make the best of it.
Right. Now, we talked a lot about historical reports. Can you tell us, has there been anything in recent years that surfaced? Any new sightings, any new claims that have been made, and how do you feel the validity of they may be?
Yeah, I mean, there's a constant string of sightings that I've investigated, and some of those in recent years are, in my opinion, if not some of the better ones. They're definitely credible, being seen by people who I consider neutral Bigfoot witnesses. Not, Bigfoot groups that go down there, once a year, and every time they just happen to see it. I'm not so sure about that.
Right.
Locals who had lived there for 40 years and say, I don't believe in the creature, and then on one occasion, suddenly they're in the right place or wrong place at the time. They see something, they see it, they're confronted. Those are the witnesses where I say, man, that person, they saw something. And so I've had several of those. There was a particularly good one from I think it was about 2016. There was a newspaper carrier down there that saw it run across the road one morning as she was throwing papers. Of course, now with these new ones, I can actually go there and interview the person and see right where it happened. So this is the good thing, as opposed to the old ones. I kind of have to, some of the, I'm not able to interview firsthand or be there right when it happened or whatever. But the newspaper carrier was a great one. There was one about a year before that in which a woman saw something near the Sulphur River at 10 a.m. In the morning. It came out in the road and paused just several seconds before it ran back into the woods. And I mean, this is clear daylight. And I interviewed that woman and felt 100% sure that she saw something that could not be explained, easily. And, as you go backwards in time, there's probably, 2 or 3 at least a year that I'm investigating, and I've hear rumors of other ones, and slowly but surely I kind of fill in that log, which it just keeps expanding. On my FoukeMonster.net website, I've got a sightings log, and you can see every sighting that I've logged on there, which of course cover it more in depth in my books, but yeah, it's amazing how you just kind of see these patterns of sightings that just every year there's 2 or 3 good solid sightings. So those are the ones that kind of keep the legend alive, if you will.
So now, when there is like a higher cluster of sightings, is there any like environmental reasons? Are they, sometimes they do like controlled burns and stuff like that. So I was kind of wondering if there's ever, something that's pushing the creature closer to town, closer to homes and stuff like that. So have you seen anything that correlates like an environmental reason with the increase in sightings?
I definitely try to look for that. And I think that, in a lot of years lately, it's flooded down there in the Sulphur River bottoms, and I mean it is flooded extensively. So those are the times when I almost expect there to be more sightings, because they're going to have to come out of those bottoms. And unfortunately, it still just seems there's not so much of a big cluster of sightings on any one event. Even if it floods, it's still just sort of that, few sightings here and there. But there's never anything, an environmental impact where you just suddenly see a whole bunch of sightings. The only pattern I see is a lot of them occur at certain times of the year more than others. So you do see a kind of a seasonal time, and that, who knows, that might reflect the fact that they move around from Arkansas to Texas to Louisiana or something like that, and prefer one area over another at certain times of year. But yeah, there's no really distinct pattern. It's just luck and random sightings, I think.
Right. That was one of the things that I was going to ask is like migratory routes. I would imagine the further south you go, the sources where they get their food would probably be a little bit more consistent and have more longevity throughout the year, as opposed to like where we are up in Pennsylvania and Virginia, where the seasons change quite dramatically, especially here in Pennsylvania. I know in my neck of the woods, I'm on like east central Pennsylvania, about 2.5 hours north of Philadelphia. I live up in pretty mountainous, in the Appalachian Mountains, in a mountainous area, and there's been a lot of reports in my area, and it seems to be very much seasonal, as like they kind of change from like the highland to the lowland throughout the year. And I had a site in particular. I used to live on 150 acres. I lived on a farmhouse. I now live in town. I don't live out there anymore, but I had some activity on my property, and it seemed I spoke to some other researchers that I felt were very credible, and they had suggested about migratory routes, which I didn't think about that at the time. And it makes a lot of sense, but I was curious as to the Fouke area, like the Fouke monster, would it move around a lot down there, being that it's a more, for lack of better, I guess, a more controlled climate, if you will?
Yeah, the climate here is, I mean, you're not going to, from southern Arkansas, if you went to South Texas all the way down, you're not going to see a huge difference in climate. So, yeah, they wouldn't really need to move, like they would, like birds, moving very long distances from north to south. So the movement, whatever, if they are moving around, I think that would be purely based on food source or something like that, where, just like a cougar or anything else, they have a very wide range where they, live. They don't just live within a few miles. I mean, they may roam 80 or 100-mile square circular radius, just based on the demand of food and things like that. So I think if they move around, it would be based on dietary needs or, territory, clans. I mean, it could be even a social thing, who knows?
That's true. Yeah, you see that more with primates and whatnot, where it's more of a territorial and like you said, a social, and you have a good neighbors and bad neighbors, and you kind of stick within those areas. Whereas with other like apex predators like bears and cougars, like you said, they're more solitary and distinct areas where they don't interact unless they're going to fight each other for their territory. So now, do you know if there's any like photographic or video evidence that's out there at all, that because I mean, aside from the movie, I've never seen much in the way of, well, aside from pictures of tracks and whatnot, I've never really seen any photographic or video evidence of the creature.
No, there's never been any credible photo that's surfaced or even a video from down there, which is which is kind of odd because you see all these videos, not even necessarily good ones coming out of Bigfooty areas, but yeah, there's never been one. Now, a lot of people over time have told me, about so and so. My buddy, he had a game camera picture, this and that, and then of course, I try to get a hold of it, and it's always either been lost or, was there's something. So, I mean, I've heard of photos or so-called photos and videos, but no, there's never been any that myself or any other researcher down here has ever come across supposedly showing the Fouke monster. So that's
don't you love that? I mean, I'm sure your instances are far greater than mine, and probably far more frustrating. But I have a lot of people locally that come to me with paranormal or cryptozoological related questions and inquiries and whatnot, and I always get these people, oh, I know this guy, he's got this amazing photograph, he got it on a trail cam, there's this beautiful shot. I'm like, great, can you get it for me? Can I analyze it? Can I take a look at it? Oh yeah, we can't get that.
Yeah.
It's like, well, why the hell are you telling me?
I hear you, man. It's like, why even tell me about this? How about you get the picture and then you start telling me?
Come to me. Exactly. God, is that frustrating?
Yeah, that's just I guess the nature of this sort of thing, But yeah, same kind of thing here. I never could run down any of those.
Yeah. It's hard to get some people to come forward to begin with, and then the ones that do never have the substantial evidence anyway,
Yeah, I usually find that the more people want to tell you, share stuff and bug you, and they've seen it 100 times and all that, they're the least credible. The person that somebody says you should go talk to this guy, he said something once or whatever, and the guy that it takes a while to convince him to tell you, that's a really good sighting. That's good stuff.
The tight-lipped people, the ones the hard nuts to crack, those are the ones you want to kind of stick with.
Yeah. So those are, like I said, I like kind of those witnesses, or what I call neutral witnesses, not people going to look for Bigfoot, but people who just came across it, civilians, because there's just a rash of these groups popping up that just have these outrageous claims. I mean, I know deer hunters from Fouke that have been going in those woods for 40 years and never seen anything. Even Smokey Crabtree, who's well known, was in the movie. His son had a sighting. Smokey never even had a sighting. And you're going to tell me you made up a
pretty much in the boondocks, didn't they? Like,
yeah,
they lived very remote.
Oh yeah, he lived in the middle of where tons of these sightings had occurred. I mean, and you just got to be lucky, and it's few and far between. So you're going to tell me a Bigfoot group that popped up? They started a Bigfoot group on Facebook, several, a year, 9 months ago, has been to Fouke twice and has had 2 encounters. I'm like, no, that's just, or anywhere else. It's not even specifically Fouke, but it just, or they went to the state park and they had 4 Bigfoots coming around. I'm like, no, it's just not credible to me.
Right. It's kind of like the people who claim that they have like a habituation site, but yet they can't take you there and they can't show you anything, but they got them,
Yeah, I get tons of that. And, again, those are the people that that often say a lot. And, my response at this point, I can't drive around the country just I could go from one to another, if I had money or something. But, my challenge to them is, you've seen them so many times, they're on the property so much, get a good footprint cast, get samples of hair or droppings or a picture. You can put up a game camera just as easily as I can, and if they're that frequent, and if you show me some good stuff, dude, I'm coming. I'm down there. I will come down there and bring a couple of my crew, and we will take it from there. But I need to be shown something more promising, because there's 100 people telling me of habituations, but which ones are the good ones, I can't figure out.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. It's too bad you couldn't pitch the idea of like a Monster Hunter show where you would literally travel around the country and or the world seeking these out and trying to depict the fact from fake kind of thing. That'd be awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that would be good if I had a show like that. Maybe it'll happen.
Yeah, I think there was a show, Monster Hunter or something, on Nat Geo. You look more like a monster hunter than that guy did. I tell you what. Not knocking him or anything, but like he didn't strike me as a monster hunter.
Yeah, I think the problem with TV and the networks is that they don't care if you're authentic. They just want a person that they can control. I mean, I've been approached by I don't know how many production companies and networks telling me I need my own show, and then in the end, it's not the show that I would want, and it's not, or I'm not as good as, them picking some actor or something who, whatever. So it never goes anywhere, which is, been a waste of time over the years, because it's a constant thing. Now, I no longer even will entertain any of it, but at first I thought, okay, let's check this out. Realized no, they're about making ridiculous TV in most cases, except for the show Monsters and Mysteries in America that I was on, and I was a story producer. Those people listened to me, and they made a good show with real witnesses. I'm like, okay, this is good stuff.
Right. But I love those shows because the stories and the subjects that they had in there, it was more or less telling the story of a legend. It wasn't over fabricating. It wasn't, a bunch of BS. It was, hey, this is a story from this place. Here's people that had witnessed things. There you go. That was entertainment. That was entertaining to me. Kind of like Monster Quest was too. When they had that going on. I loved Monster Quest because it was a little bit more. I mean, you never really had much as far as like you didn't get to see conclusive evidence by any means, but they told you a story of a certain area. They interviewed the witnesses. That to me was more entertaining and enjoyable than some of the other hokey stuff that's out there. But I guess you got to make money somehow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, you're right. Yeah, I enjoy those shows. I like the story of the legend, and it's not necessarily. I think everybody, to me, knows that you're not going to prove it. I mean, you're on camera. You're there for 3 or 4 days. What are your chances? Whatever.
Right.
But the story in and of itself is fascinating, and I mean, it's kind of like what I've done with the Small Town Monsters movies, the Boggy Creek Monster, the Mothman, Point Pleasant. It just tells the history, and that's the cool part. And I find that the networks or the pitches I get, they don't understand that that's fascinating. They seem to want to fabricate or go further with some crazy stuff. Like, you don't need to do that. It's already a cool story. Just if you tell the facts around these creepy sightings, you're good. That's all you need. But they don't seem to agree, I guess.
Well, if you think about it, throughout, like growing up as kids and stuff, you always sit around a campfire and you always tell ghost stories or monster stories and stuff. And the fact that some of these are based on true events or eyewitness encounters just makes it all that more. Everybody loves a monster story or a ghost story. You don't have to over fabricate that.
Exactly that. Yeah, precisely. And that's kind of why, of course I love writing books because I have complete control over that, my books they're just neutral looks at I just say, here's the facts, or here's the story, decide for yourself. I'm not on the agenda to prove
You're
the
unbiased
creature.
And uninterrupted, you know what I mean? Uninfluenced. So.
Right,
But
kind of an investigative journalist approach in some ways to it, not overly Bigfoot research or kind of biased, I guess.
But speaking of your books, can you give the listeners a little bit? Tell us about the books that you have written, and also, would you be okay if we posted Amazon affiliated links to your books so people could find them on Amazon and buy them?
Yes, surely. Yeah,
right,
definitely.
So to all our listeners out there, before you go on there, Lyle, I apologize. I don't mean to cut you off, but we're going to post on under the in the comments section under the show on Facebook. We'll post all the links to Amazon, to Lyles Books, so that you guys could get them, check them out, enjoy them, keep them for your personal library. So Lyle, take it away, my friend. Talk about your first book, and then move on to the next ones, if you don't mind.
Okay, well, the first one was called "The Beast of Boggy Creek: The True Story of the Fouke Monster," and that came out in 2012. And as I mentioned, that was sort of what launched me into this whole thing. And I probably started researching for that book in a way years before that. I was already getting more, I don't know, serious about looking into modern Bigfoot research, and then started meeting some of the people that had been involved in the legend of Boggy Creek, and then that just sort of led to the Beast of Boggy Creek. And that book just literally tells the history of the sightings of the creature, the making of the movie, how all that was done, how all it played together, and then which during my research, I was surprised that, sightings had continued. They just hadn't been, recorded. So then the book also brings you up with all those other sightings that have occurred over the years. And that left off, I think, where I turned in the manuscript and so forth, was probably my sightings went up to about 2009-ish or so on Beast of Boggy Creek. So that book was very well received, and so I thought, wow, this is great. Maybe I should write another book. So what should I do here? So I thought, what would any other dude do? I should go on a swamp tour and go to a bunch of locations in the South where people had been reporting other weird creatures. And one of those stops on the swamp tour, I was at Bishopville, South Carolina, where there had been reports of this lizard man creature and a big case from the late 80s, people seeing this sort of a modern day creature from the Black Lagoon, if you will, in Skateboard Swamp. And I thought, man, this is cool stuff. And I'd heard, of course, read about this case, but when I'm there on site, I'm starting to learn more that I've never read about, other sightings, meeting witnesses. I talked to a retired sheriff that had been involved in the case, and he gave me all the police files on it, the whole deal. So my second book was Lizard Man, The True Story of the Bishopville Monster. And again, I just, present the story in an engaging way. And then following that, I did, got involved with Monsters and Mysteries in America, and we did some film or TV type things. And then I did a book. I still write for Rue Morgue magazine, the horror magazine. So they do a library edition.
How can we find that? Rue Morgue.
It's available at, on newsstands like Barnes and Noble. Bookstore carries it. I think Books A Million, what few book chains there are. I know those places carry it. A lot of comic book stores that carry magazines will carry that. A Rue Morgue website, of course, you can subscribe. And I do a column every month. I got about almost like at least half a page. It's a pretty big section there every month where I do cryptid type feature. So it's cool. But I have a column called Monstro Bizarro, which I did a Rue Morgue Library Edition book, where in that book I cover the sort of the relationship between cryptozoology and horror movies, or even horror culture, like toys and games and movies and everything else that involve cryptids. So that was kind of cool because, the legend of Boggy Creek basically is that. It's a real story, real cryptid case made into a horror movie. So I have a whole book on, that sort of thing. And my current latest book is called Beyond Boggy Creek in Search of the Southern Sasquatch. And in this one, I pick up kind of where Beast of Boggy Creek left off, and I bring me up to date on some more of the recent Fouke sightings. And then I go all throughout the Southeast in about 10 states, looking at the history of Bigfoot sightings, all throughout the Deep South, and a lot of those, again, they're such cool and creepy and fascinating stories. It's just that they never had a famous movie made. So a lot of these weren't ever, they were in newspapers or and things like that, but they were not as famous, but they're equally as cool. And, skunk ape and all in between, it covers all that. So that's the latest book.
Now, can you tell us, have you yourself ever had a sighting or an eyewitness encounter?
No, unfortunately, I have not had, any sighting that I would definitively say that I saw a Sasquatch or any other cryptid. There's been on several occasions where I think there was a distinct possibility I was close, based on footprints or howls or a strange incident in Florida. So there's been a few times where, I didn't quite see whatever it was. So I can't say for sure, but that's as close as I've come personally. And, I'm something in between an investigative journalist and somebody who does go in the woods. I just like going in the outdoors. And of course, if I can look for cryptids, even better. So I've definitely been there, and I grew up hunting with my father, but I wasn't too aware that even like in Texas that there was a lot of Bigfoot sightings. So I didn't really look, I wasn't looking.
Right.
So I look back, I'm like, man, I wish I would have, in all those times I would have looked at the ground, looked for footprints, may have just walked right past something, who knows,
Yeah, now the times where you kick yourself in the pants for not being more vigilant,
Yeah, see, if I'd have known I'd grow up to be a monster hunter, I probably would have, been more about it when I was a kid. I loved it, but I just never, I never really thought of myself as someone who could see something like that. It was always just, wow, somebody else saw that,
Yeah, I think part of the reason why when I hunted, I never looked around for stuff like that because I didn't want to end up seeing something like that while I was out hunting.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah, we're kind of the same way as you too, where we all, well, Chad is originally from Pennsylvania. He now lives in Virginia, but we grew up together. And we were always in and out of the woods. He hunted, I didn't, but I lived in the woods, and I was fascinated with basically all things strange from the time I could remember. Boggy Creek, the legend of Boggy Creek was a big influence, but one of the biggest influences on me was Harry and Henderson's. Has got to be one of my hands down absolute favorite movies. Now I know it's a family film, total Hollywood and stuff, but there's so many aspects of that movie that are conceivable to a Bigfoot creature. And the thing that always gets me the most is at the very end, like, because people are like, how can we not see them? And blah, 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 blah. We should be able to see them. There's so many people out in the woods. Well, take the last scene from that movie. You're sitting there watching this movie, right? Mm-hmm. You're seeing people interacting. You're seeing, Harry's there, talking, interacting with George and whatnot. And he walks away. He's walking into the woods and whatnot. But as people, we're geared to focus on the obvious, to focus on what's right in front of us. We're kind of oblivious, if you will. Like if we're out in the woods, most times you're walking down a trail. Typically, your attention is on the trail in front of you. Your 2 feet, most times when you're walking in the woods, your head's down because you don't want to trip over shit. You know what I mean? You don't want to fall on your ass. So you're not really paying attention. Our senses are so dull compared to everything else. But you take that last scene of the movie. You're sitting there, you're watching the movie. You're feeling as though you're aware of everything, the surroundings and whatnot. And then boom, he walks away, and like 3, maybe 4 other Bigfoot creatures just get up and walk from out of nowhere. That scene to me holds so much credibility in the sense of this is why we don't see so many of them out there, because not that they don't disappear or travel through parallel universes. I mean, I don't subscribe to that. I no offense to people who do, but I just think that they're so well camouflaged and so well adapt to their environment, and we as humans are so damn oblivious. Now, granted, there's groups. I mean, I go out scouting my local area looking for whatever the hell I could find, because we do have a lot of reports that come in. I'm in Carbon County, Pennsylvania, so we do have reports that come in this area, and I like to get out and try and investigate and see what I could find out of those reports. But even still, you're out there and you're trying to look for the obvious. You're not going to see it because we're not geared to hone in on that stuff. Like I was out in the woods the one time, and there was a buck, and I caught it out of the corner of my eye. The thing was so well blended, and it was just the fact that his antlers differentiated from the branches around him that I caught that. Had I not seen that, I would have no idea that it had to have been a 250-pound plus buck just standing there 50 feet from me. You know what I mean? Had I not caught that one little glimpse. So I don't know.
I think people underestimate animals' abilities. I mean, that is especially something that would conceivably have higher intelligence that might want to stay hidden, just like you say at the end of Harry and the Hendersons. I mean, that's the real possibility, that if they want to stay hidden, they have the ability to do so, and we're not. That is not our environment, our natural environment. We've got accustomed to cities and cell phones, and
always looking down. We're always looking down, and that's how it is. That's why when I go hiking, I always take my dog with me, because I hope that his senses are better than mine.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times the dog, you sense it and either go towards it or run the other way, or
somewhere you're going to be alarmed.
Yeah, but they can sense the animals because they're a little more in touch, I suppose. But yeah, I mean, and you wonder how many times I may have walked past a cougar or something and never seen it, which is a scary proposition. But though they are so elusive, I mean, and they come out at dusk. I mean, just when the light drops, and in a lot of the Bigfoot sightings here in the South, I see a lot of that where people, something comes out. It's just right there on the edge of us being able to see very well. Yep. Unless you have a thermal or something, then they're moving at times when it's super hard to see them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So, and you got to think too, these things have evolved to adapt or to their environment. You know what I mean? It's not like this is something new, and how could you not? If they do exist?
Yeah,
you know what I mean. It's not just some new creature that was just fresh off the press. I mean, this thing has been out there for who knows how long, probably much longer than humans, and it's probably obviously, if it's been around that long, it's grown alongside of us, and it knows how much of how horrible we are as a species. So, I mean, I'm sure it's learned over time, which, like a lot of animals do. A lot of animals avoid human areas. I'm sure they've learned that, hey, you know what? That's something I don't want to go near.
Yeah, I mean, that's all possible that they have the wherewithal to stay clear, or I guess on occasion they got to cross roads and they got to do other stuff, and they might be seen. But yeah, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that they could do what they wanted to do and stay hidden. And I mean, humans are usually the people who tell me, "Oh, Bigfoot, I don't believe in that." It's like, dude, when was the last time you ever were out in the woods? Unless this is coming from some rugged hunter, and usually hunters are pretty open-minded. I find they're like, yeah, well, I know a guy who saw. They always know a guy who saw something, you know. But some dude in a cubicle or whatever, I'm like, dude, you don't know anything about the woods or animals or anything else. If I dropped you in the middle of Mercer Bayou, you'd die, because you wouldn't know what to do, and you'd realize that you'd be lost.
Oh, hell yeah.
You think there's no place to hide, nobody will find you, you know.
Even a lot of the most seasoned survivalists and outdoorsmen would have a tough time surviving out in the bare elements, you know, let alone just some Joe Schmo who thinks he knows more than you know.
Oh sure, it's not, you know. Yeah, we're out of our element. We're, you know, and that's their element. It's not that easy to survive in the woods.
Well, you were saying about like Facebook groups and stuff like that. I always love when, you know, somebody you've seen before or can go back and kind of scroll through their history has never been into being an outdoorsman or hunter or fisherman, and you know, really has no hiking or anything, and all of a sudden they're posting their you know, expert opinion on animals and their wilderness, and it's always quite funny when you see those people out there. Oh yeah, I'm always out there once a week, you know, once a year. But yeah, they always kind of have that on their Facebook, out looking for Bigfoot, or out doing, you know, checking my trail cams. And half the time, like, their trail cams are 50 yards into the woods off a highway somewhere. But
yeah, I hear that. Like, you know, people say, "Oh man, I found this in a place where nobody is. There's nobody up there." I'm like, dude, you're there, and you're walking with you know, you can barely walk. So I don't know. I don't know how it is that nobody else could have been up there or whatever, because it's usually a footprint. I'm like, it looks a bit human to me. Yeah, but nobody would be out there. I'm like, you're on the edge of a river and kids and people running around. I go, probably a human. I mean, I'm just saying. I mean, there's good tracks, certainly, and there's credible folks, but yeah, there's a lot of white noise right now with all this, and that kind of makes it difficult. There's good stuff and there's good people. Right. But yeah, there's a lot of noise that just kind of gunks up the internet. And you know, I saw today where some group had posted a photo. They said they had gotten from one of their game cameras. All they did, this was a photo that's been circulating out there on the internet for a while. It's a hoax. I mean, obviously you see it. And they claimed that they had gotten it. I mean, that's a total bust.
Yeah, you do definitely see a lot of that. And, you know, Les and I are not exactly skinny little people, but you see a lot of people who haven't left the couch in quite a few years that are, you know, out there professing their knowledge of, you know, Sasquatch and you know, their habitats and their environments and, you know, social behaviors. And it's like, that's a lot of speculation, you know, to, you know, be putting out there online and stuff like that.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation that goes on. And let me just say, people look to me because I've written books, and I mean, historically and factually, I know a lot of stuff, but I'm no expert. You know, I don't claim to be any more knowledgeable than anybody else, other than maybe some dates and facts, because ultimately, if none of us can prove it, we're kind of still on the same level playing field. So, you know, everybody's just is valid. And I'm no expert. I mean, a newspaper, I saw at one time a newspaper printed an article, Bigfoot expert says something, you know, dude, and people jumped on me. I'm like, I didn't say that. They put that label. I would never say that. You know, the newspapers will print what they want. I can't, you know, tell them what to put as a headline. But, you know, I don't. I just say I'm just looking into it just like anybody else. And if I post if I post something like a picture or anything else, it's going to be a good one. It's not going to be a fuzzy one or a
blob squatch.
blur, because at this point we got to demand better evidence. There's enough blurry photos that even if it is a Sasquatch, it doesn't prove anything. It doesn't help. It doesn't advance. So if it's not as good at, if it's not as clear as even the Patterson Gimlin film, then it just should not even be posted. Just get get good stuff and put the good stuff. Weed out. We don't need, we went on, here's 30 photos of the woods with red circles all over it.
Yeah. Oh, I can't stand those.
It doesn't help. Yeah.
And it's funny too, because I mean, on one hand, the technology is so advanced these days. I mean, even with a freaking cell phone and the cameras that we have these days, drones, there's so many different avenues that we could capture and collect trail cams that you could leave out for, weeks to months at a time. There's so many ways that we can collect data and evidence. However, to play the devil's advocate, I mean, I am a photographer. I've been in photography and design and art for 20 years of my career. And I know my way around a camera, but I could tell you this, there's always, when you're out and you want to catch something, like even sometimes, like if I go out and I'm not a wildlife photographer by any means, I'm more of a studio photographer, but I do like to go out and photograph landscapes and wildlife and whatnot on my own time. It's not part of my business or anything, but when I do go out there, I always have the best intentions to try and catch something. But when you are out there and you do see an animal or something, usually they're moving away from you. So the time to react is so like, oh crap, it's so short to react. And in other times too, I think in some cases when you do come upon, let's just say you do happen upon a Bigfoot, you're probably so freaking scared or just stuck in awe of the situation that you don't even think to pick up and react. You know what I mean? So there's always that, two sides of the coin. A lot of people say, oh, well, with everything that we have, you should be able to. And that is true. And if you are out trying to look for it, you should have, good chances with the technology to get a non-blob squatch or what is it, pareidolia with the, I see a face. No, you see some freaking leaves with some highlights on it. You know what I mean? But like I said, on the other side of the coin, when you are out there and you do see something and it's moving, it is very difficult to get that perfect shot. You know what I mean? So.
Oh, I completely agree. Because, people often say that, man, we got all the cell phones. How come you get a picture? Well, like you say, I mean, okay, you got to see it. You got to get your phone. You got to turn it on, get the app for the camera open or whatever. In those few seconds,
before it crosses the road.
Animals, before it crosses the road, and even a deer, you're lucky. I mean, I give an example. I was hog hunting once, and I was sitting there. I was just sitting, and on the edge of this creek. And I always have my camera, nearby and all that, because, you might see something other than a hog. And a beaver gets out and just pops out, and he's right there. I mean, it's a National Geographic shot of a beaver, and, in full view. And so I'm trying to get my camera. I'm going to get a great shot. And by the time I get the camera and get it up, ready to focus, he jumps in the water and
yep.
I'm like, God, dude, I mean, beavers exist. I've seen them.
Yeah. But get that picture of it,
But I couldn't get that picture. And that, I had several seconds, and this just shows you it, something that is only there for a few seconds. It's not that easy, even if you've got the technology. You've got to be ready, like you say.
Well, like you said, the National Geographic, it was that National Geographic moment. Well, you think about those National Geographic photographers who are literally out there in the elements, lying on their stomachs for hours at a time, waiting for that goddamn beaver to pop its head out of the water. You know what I mean? I mean, that's what you have to go through in order to get that, $1 million shot, So I guess, to get that perfect Bigfoot shot, you would almost have to have a habituation site or know of where a clan might be denning or something like that, and sit out there and basically wear the same shit for days at a time, to mask your scent, so you could lay out there underneath a log waiting for that one perfect moment to get that quote National Geographic shot. You know what I mean? So that is almost what it would take to get that conclusive, no way can this be faked kind of shot, So
right, yeah, I agree. That's and that is hard. That's a long way from just whipping out a cell phone while you're walking or driving. It's that there's a whole nother level of what you would have to do to get a photo, but that's going to be the photo that's necessary. Even a photo wouldn't prove Bigfoot, but at least if there was something that looked pretty darn good, that would sort of say, hey, maybe
right.
there's
something that could light the fire underneath scientific minds to be like, we should put more interest in this.
Yeah, get some funding where, I could probably prove Sasquatch if it actually paid anything to go 6 months on a expanded expedition or something. But this is just hit and miss, and amateur research is everything that's going. And unfortunately, that's cool, but amateur is amateur, and a lot of it, like I said, clouds up the it's not so, but not of the most scientific nature. And of course, mainstream science sees that, and they see Harry and the Henderson, they go, dude, I'm not going to have nothing to do with that. And you almost can't blame them,
Yeah, no, I hear you. But again, like I said before, on the other side of the coin, with all the footprints and all the other kind of data collected on the subject, you would think that there would be some more academic minds interested. I mean, what do we have kind of on our side now is Meldrum, Bindernagel. They're the only two that come to my mind from, or Esteban Sarmiento, if I'm saying that correctly. I believe he's a scientist, right? A primatologist of some sort. I could be wrong.
Yeah, he's a primatologist. Yeah, I mean, he's got an open mind. I mean, even Todd Disatel, the DNA guy, he's he in the science lab, he's all about it. If you give him if he had a good sample, he'd be open to it. So yeah, there's people who will entertain it, and of course, the Meldrum and that sort of a thing. But yeah, it's a hard subject to convince people. Yeah. Not even if they do see that good evidence, and there is some good footprints and good stuff. It's just that it comes with a whole lot of that baggage, like it comes with everything else. And I think, especially the more, I tell you, the thing that's the worst is those fake news sites with the trying to get you to click on them and clickbait and all that stuff.
Yeah.
They keep posting all these ridiculous, I was, Bigfoot body, or I was, I was raped by a Bigfoot or whatever. And, that just circulates, and it's just ridiculous. And I see Bigfoot enthusiasts that continually circulate those fake stories. They don't even look into it to see what they're, posting, and they're debating. I see them debating on it. I'm like, dude, it's not even a real story. Don't even click on it. Don't even just, boy, So
it's so funny that you said that, because I just recently repeatedly, because all my friends and people that I know I'm into this stuff, so I get all that kind of stuff sent to me, whether it be, hokey or not. And the Colorado man sexually assaulted by Bigfoot. If somebody sends that to me one more goddamn time,
yeah, dude. Oh, I hear you, man. That guy's picture's burned into my mind. I see that. You know what I'm talking? That one picture over and over. I'm like, yes, I've seen this, and it's not even real.
I know. It's like, stop sending.
Well, the best thing about all that is it's the old supermarket tabloids, and the stories are just repeats of those old stories. And actually, when I was working with the newspaper, one of the marketing campaigns we had come up with was, you didn't bring this home back then, why would you bring it home now, as referring to the online news and stuff like that. And a lot of the, basically Bat Boy. And I actually did a design with the Bigfoot, or one of the old Bigfoot from the Weekly World News, or one of those that they used to always use the same Bigfoot image. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I mean, that's basically online supermarket tabloids. But now, Lyle, I want to ask you, about your music and maybe some of your upcoming events, if you're speaking anywhere, and maybe a website that we could go to for the fans to listen to the music and kind of see your events and stuff like that.
Anything you want to plug about yourself, please feel free to go for it.
All right. I'm always speaking at all sorts of events around North America. And I think coming up next year, the first one is in February. I think it's the Pensacola Comic-Con I'll be at, and Pensacola, Florida. And then there's the Southeast Texas Bigfoot Conference in April. I'll be at Minerva Monster Day up in Ohio in June, on and on. But if you go to my website, lyleblackburn.com, Lyle Blackburn.com, it's got a list of all my upcoming appearances, where I'll be, links to my books, and links to my band Ghoultown. And that music is available on iTunes and Amazon and everywhere you can get music as well. My books, I've got a web store where you can get autographed books, and you can get them on Amazon and BarnesandNoble.com and wherever finer books are sold, and Kindle and Nook and all those other electronic formats. So you can get all that. Just go to lyleblackburn.com and check it out, and look for some of my documentary films I'm involved with. You can see those on Amazon, stream those, and all kinds of stuff.
Awesome. Well, I posted your website on the Facebook page underneath our show, so that way people could find you more easily and see what you're up to and where you're going to be, and hopefully enjoy what they get. I know we do. So yeah. So I know you could only go till 10 o'clock, so I don't want to hold you up, because, dude, once you get to know me well, I could talk forever, man. It's shut me up. That's the hard part. So I just want to say, on behalf of Chad and myself, thank you so very much for taking the time tonight to talk to us. You really have no idea how much we appreciate it. And, good luck with all your future endeavors and whatnot. And I hope we get to talk to you again.
Yeah, sounds good, man. I appreciate it. I enjoyed it. And, hey, anybody that wants to talk Fouke Monster, I can't pass up that opportunity. So I appreciate you having me on. And, if I have some good announcements, and I should have some cool stuff coming up next year, we can come back and talk more.
Sounds great, because we'd like to talk to you about the Lizard Man. That's one of our show topics for later on in the 2018. So if you're available, brother, we'd love to have you on to talk about that as well.
You bet. I know a thing or two about lizard men.
Yeah. All right, Lyle. Well, you have yourself a good night, man. And if we don't talk to you sooner, I know we're coming into December, so have a Merry Christmas, buddy.
Yeah, you guys too. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lyle. See ya.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right. Well, that was Lyle Blackburn, everybody. He's a cryptozoologist, author, TV and radio personality, as well as a musician. He's the frontman of Ghoultown. They play some pretty cool rock music. You guys could go check that out on Facebook at Lyle's page, or you can find links to it on at lyleblackburn.com. Super cool guy to talk to. I was so glad to have him on the show. What do you think, bud?
Yeah, I mean, actually, very interesting. He actually said we could mention that we're friends with him in public, so that
Yeah.
helps.
Score, score.
Yeah.
Fanboy props right there, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's one of those things where you get somebody like Lyle or Jeff Walmsley who just enjoy sharing the history of what they've learned, some of their experiences, and it's enjoyable because what keeps me involved in cryptozoology and the paranormal is really the historical study of everything, the learning the history, the learning the, as we've seen most places that we end up doing investigations, is finding out about the Native American culture that lived there prior to white settlers, learning about the early white settlers, learning about, all the way up to modern day. And me, I've always been a history nerd.
And a nerd just in general.
Yeah, well,
that's why I love you.
I know. But you know what I mean? Like, that is truly what keeps me involved and keeps me, like, learning and reading. One of the things I actually watched one of Lyle's presentations on Beyond Boggy Creek, and I sat there and played it, and then I was like, hold on a second, I gotta send this to Les, send this to Russ, send this to a lot of people I know, just because it was so informative and he's so relatable in the way he's done his research. And like he says, he's in between an investigative journalist and a field researcher. So he's not, no offense,
as well as just a regular Joe as well, you know what I mean? Kind of.
Yeah, he's not out there touting his theory or his belief. He's being an investigative journalist, learning the facts, details, the stories.
Right, weeding out the BS,
Yeah, and the white noise and stuff like that. And he's actually in the field then, maybe, somebody could go out and say, oh, well, I'm in the field more than he is. And he just, yeah, you might be, but this man has made a part of his life interviewing these people, talking to the families, traveling to the areas. Like I've been to Fouke, and like I said, the only reason I knew I was in Fouke was the Monster Mart. You could blink and be on the other side of Fouke. There is nothing there. There's no hotel. There's nothing. Like the nearest hotel, I believe, is Texarkana, which is one of that area is very interesting. Texarkana, Fouke. Charles Pierce, who did the movies, did the Legend of Boggy Creek and then a couple of follow-ups, also wrote Sudden Impact, which was a Dirty Harry movie. One of his other claims to fame is The Town That Dreads Sundown, which is about the Phantom Killer or the Phantom Murderer or whatever, Phantom, it's been stated in papers different ways over the years, which was basically a serial killer that struck in Texarkana in the 40s. To me, very similar, and I'll never be able to prove it, but very similar to the Zodiac Killer without the newspaper mailing letters and stuff like that to him. But that area and the producer of that movie is one and the same. It's a very interesting part of the country. Like I said, I've been there. It is like I told you when I was there, I called you or messaged you. I'm like, if there is an area where Bigfoot does exist, this is one of them. Because it is just vast expanses of no human being there.
Right.
So I would definitely like to thank Lyle for coming on the show tonight. And it was truly a pleasure having him.
Yeah, like you had said before, like with his speeches, you had sent that one to me, and I've seen him talk not in person, but through videos and whatnot. And he just strikes me as this just a laid back, really likable, not over the top, showy. He's just your regular dude, who's just out to find the truth. Like we are. We're out to seek the truth. That's kind of our shtick.
Yeah, and I mean that's the thing. I would definitely, if if he is speaking anywhere nearby within probably about a 2 to 3 state radius, I would.
No. I'm coming to pick you up, and we're road tripping it.
Where are we going?
We're going wherever the hell he's going next, and we'll go meet him in person and check it out.
We're gonna follow Lyle on tour, like those people that used to follow the Grateful Dead. We'll just show up.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I guys, come on, really? I said you could say you were my friend, in public when I wasn't around. Don't act like we're all like cool here. But no, I would definitely go see him speak, and
Well, he had mentioned the event in Ohio, and I believe it's at the Salt Fork State Park is where they usually have most of their events. Because supposedly Salt Fork State Park is big in Sasquatch activity. I've always been meaning to go over there. I know Sean Forker from Keystone Bigfoot Project, well, formerly known as the Pennsylvania Bigfoot Society. I know he goes out there from occasion, and he and I have always been trying to go, and it's always, we could never coordinate schedules. So maybe you and I could plan it, and we'll go out there. I mean, that's not that far away.
I think it's like 6 hours from me.
Yeah, that's not bad.
Oh yeah, 6 hours.
We've done further road trips than that, just on a whim. So
yeah, I would definitely like to see somebody like Lyle, like I said, because he's not touting his theory. Sometimes you listen to certain, speakers, and some of them present some very good information. They've done their research on the history and the factual parts of the stories and weeding out the white noise.
Right.
But they have their theory, and they're subliminally and purposely pushing their theory while making a presentation on the subject in general.
Right.
So that, and sometimes that turns me off. It's the same as somebody trying to sell you equipment.
Yeah.
I'm going to tout how good this equipment is because it's mine. Yeah. I'm going to tell you how bad, you should believe my theory because UFOs and Bigfoot have to be connected because I said so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've seen some speakers too, and it was all a commercial gimmick.
Mm-hmm.
You go there and they give you teasers of a story, and then it's like, now I already had paid to see them, mind you. I've already paid an initial fee, right? Then you go and you listen to them talk, and then you got to buy the book. Well, I bought all of them. But I bought all the books and the videos, which are sitting on my creature collection over there on the bookshelf. But I mean, I'm a sucker in that aspect. But I don't necessarily want that. I want to go to pay to hear somebody who's taken the time to collect the facts of a certain topic or whatever. And I want to know about the facts. I don't want to be bait and switched. I just want to hear you speak about this certain subject. And he strikes me as the kind of guy, and like I've heard some of his presentations and stuff like that before, where it's not like that. It's you came here to get to hear about this specific thing. Here's about this specific thing. And he also does write, and has books and whatnot that everybody could go check out too. So, but you know what I mean? It's not some bait and switch. It's not a marketing ploy. It's not well, I'll give you this, but you gotta give more,
Yeah, that's the kind of stuff I don't get into. That's why I kind of keep my selection of reference material small, because if I pay X number of dollars to sit in and listen to you speak, and then you say to me, "Well, I'm going to tell you the beginning of the story, but you got to buy the book to find out how it ends," I get up and walk out because you're not going to. I'm in the martial arts. If I go to a seminar and the person shows me the technique and I leave knowing the technique, I got my money's worth.
Right.
If I go to a seminar and you say, I'm going to show you something from this position, but I'm only going to show you the first 2 parts of it, you buy my $500 DVD series and you can learn the other 4 parts of it.
Yeah.
I'm not getting what I'm paying for. I've already paid you to show me those 4 parts.
Yeah.
So
I love it.
like It's just one of those things. I'm not. I know people do this, and I know next week I'm going to probably rant and rave a little more because it's boiling down with paratourism and stuff like that, where this is becoming more, more the case with paramarketing and paratourism, buying into, getting everything is, one thing, but then you got to buy the extra piece that does this for that.
Right.
So, well, I would like to thank you for co-hosting a great show.
Are you ending our show? Are you cutting me off?
Well,
is that what you're doing here?
I mean, we could keep going, but I'm going to have to go to the bathroom at some point.
Nah, that's all right. I'm just sticking with you. Let's we could wrap up. It's been a long night and a great night.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah, I did my Penn and Teller impression there for a while. I just sat here.
Yeah, right. Well, hey man, like you said, thank you for always being here and always sharing the fun with me, like you have been for the last 20 plus years of our friendship. So
25 years.
Yeah.
You're actually older than me again, though. That's a good thing.
I am right now. I am on for a few more days anyway.
Yeah, like 2 more for another week and a half or so. But yeah you're still older.
I'll let you know how 38 is. I tell you, the pains. But no, man, thank you as always, and like you said, thanks to Lyle for coming on to the show. We really appreciate having him on. So we'll be posting the information for our next show, which will be next Thursday at 8:30 p.m. I think that's going to be our new standard time, is Thursday nights at 8:30. So the next topic will be posted tomorrow. So keep your eyes peeled on our Facebook page. We'll get that out there to everybody, so you could tune in next week and go on another little journey or adventure with us. So good night, my friend, and good night, everyone else.
Yep. Good night, everybody.
Good night.